This is Gotham TV Podcast, episode 66, about Gotham, season 2, Wrath of the Villains, episode 14, This Ball of Mud and Meanness.
Hey, this is Drew Powell. I play Butch Gilzine on Gotham, and you are listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
Welcome back, Gothamites, to episode 66 of our podcast covering Gotham Season 2, episode 14, This Ball of Mud and Meanness. I tend to forget to put in the Wrath of the Villains when I'm talking about the season 2 of this podcast, but I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hi, I'm one of your other hosts, John.
Yeah, it gets very long when you stick that in, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Long old season. We had a discussion during the week about it on our Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/Gotham TV Podcast that the season was split into Rise of the Villains and Wrath of the Villains just from a marketing perspective. And one of our listeners was asking about whether there's going to be another subtitle later on in the season, but it does seem like we're going to get a split in two even parts of Rise and Wrath of the Villains rather than season 1 season 2 and season 2.5 this season. But interesting, lots of stuff going on in this episode, doesn't it, John?
Absolutely. The title threw me somewhat this week. I kind of half expected. I know there'd been the suggestion that Clayface was going to appear, and so we're seeing this ball of mud and meanness. I kind of thought there might be a hint to that. Of course, maybe Patrick matches Malone. Maybe he becomes Clayface.
Possibly. But
I don't know enough about Clayface as a character or his origins to know whether maybe it is or maybe it isn't, but I kind of slightly wondered whether we might see Clayface in this episode, but we didn't.
No.
It was very different, but very, very good. Really teed up the young Bruce Wayne definitely down the path of Batman, for sure.
Yeah, definitely a very Bruce-centric episode. But listeners, before we get into our podcast about our discussion of this episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast over on iTunes just by going through our own direct link at gothamtvpodcast.com/iTunes. You can subscribe to the podcast there, and you can pick us up every episode when we release a new one. You can also pick us up at any other good podcast catcher just by searching Gotham TV Podcast and clicking the subscribe button over there. Make sure you do leave us a review on either iTunes or on another good podcast catcher if you can. Just helps other people find our episodes as well, and also give some good feedback to us. Always good to know how we're doing. And if you want to send us any notes or thoughts about the episodes, you can come and join the Facebook group, as I mentioned, just by going to facebook.com/groups Gotham TV Podcast, or sending an email to us at feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com. And finally, you can also follow us over on Twitter at Gotham TV Podcast, where we live tweet the episodes every Monday night as they air in the UK and Ireland on Channel 5 at 10 p.m. With that, I think it's time to get into this episode.
I think it is, absolutely. Derek, what are some of the production notes for this episode?
Well, this episode was directed by John Baring. This is the second episode he's done for Gotham. Previously, he directed The Fearsome Dr. Crane, episode 14 of season 1. So he seems to get the 14th episode of each season. We also have the episode written by Jordan Harper, who's this will be his third episode. Previously, he wrote Outlaw the Hammer, the second last episode of season 1, and he wrote Scarification, episode 5 of this season. So some veteran Gotham hands behind the camera this time. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us in your synopsis?
Hugo Strange continues his questionable tests on Oswald Cobblepot, and after he passes the ice cream test, Strange declares him sane and releases him from Arkham. However, a bemused Oswald is unleashed on Gotham, unaware that Professor Strange still has a plan in store for him. Ed Nigma is also beginning to concoct plans of his own towards a certain Jim Gordon after uncollected paychecks has Leslie Tompkins and Jim asking uncomfortable questions about Christine Kringle's whereabouts and her disappearance from the GCPD. Meanwhile, Alfred and Selina help Bruce on his investigation to find his parents' killer, Patrick Matches Malone. After Alfred is forced into a fight in an underground fight club, landing him in hospital, Bruce must continue his hunt alone. He locates and confronts Malone, who appears to confess his involvement in the murder of Bruce's parents. But despite vengeance being close, Bruce steps back from killing Malone and instead takes a surprisingly different path that will put him on the road to a life of defending Gotham.
There's some really cool stuff in this episode, but definitely a darker episode than we've seen in the past. There's some, the kind of humor came a bit from Oswald's storyline a bit, which is weird to say when you're talking about someone who's getting tortured and getting their mind reshaped, I suppose. But that did add some of the humor of the episode. But a lot of it was quite dark, really, overall.
It was, but having said that, I did seem to identify a lot more Batman 66 moments in this episode.
Right.
And maybe it was because it was so dark that then they really stood out to me. And it wasn't anything massive, but I have a few of them for my 5 points because they did stand out so much. And I think with that, I will go into my first point, my first case point, which is the ice cream test. I think to me, this was straight out of Batman 66, but it did have that weird, creepy, disturbing aspect to it, which is Hugo Strange's experiments on Oswald and whatever psychedelic techniques and drugs that he's using. We see good old Gertrude Cobblepot back here for a brief, short stint. She gets killed again, no doubt.
Sorry, John, but it's Cobblepot.
Cobblepot, indeed. She gets snotted again, this time with a baseball bat, by her lovely son. But this hallucinogenic, kind of trippy testing and experimentation that Hugo is doing to Oswald leads to this ice cream test and the fact that he's given a nice big dollop of ice cream instead of what all the other inmates are getting. And of course, all the other inmates suddenly are looking to want a piece of Cobblepot's ice cream. And what does he do but cowers and doesn't defend his ice cream from certain swiping? And then later on, what we see is that the protagonist against Oswald, who kind of really bullies him into giving up his ice cream, is tied in a chair. Oswald is led in. There are knives, chisels, saws, you name it. All of Oswald's weapons of choice. And he simply undoes all the knots and the ties with the knife and allows the guy to go rather than extracting any revenge, i.e. showing that Strange's techniques, his work, is starting to bring results. And because of all this, then, he is declared sane and he is unleashed onto an unsuspecting Gotham. The GCPD aren't informed that he's been released.
I know.
And this is all rather interesting because we do know that Strange has an appreciation that there is something there between Jim Gordon and Oswald Cobblepot from last episode. So he does have a plan for him. What that will be and how that will pan out is going to be really interesting to see. But again, we have the ice cream test here. And I thought that was a really nice, wacky motif for something that ultimately was quite dark. So this was a great little point here. And again, this would be one of my Batman 66 moments from this. The whole thing smacked of Michael Keaton's Batman. Definitely. It was so dark and gothic feel. And then I would say that the final part with the young Bruce Wayne felt very Chris Nolan Batman.
Yes.
So really taking from all these different previous legacies of Batman on film and on TV. So it was really good, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And great to see Carol Kane back as Gertrude Cobblepot. Always nice to see her in the show. You can always think that about Gotham. If a character disappears or dies or gets shot or stabbed, hopefully we will see them back again in the future. One of the interesting ones here in the I suppose, the ice cream test. It is, in fact, Aaron Helsinger, the last surviving member of the Maniacs, that tries to take the ice cream from Oswald. So I think the only other Maniac probably would be Jessica Lucas's Tabitha Gallivan, but she wasn't really a particular member of the group. All the rest of them are either in a coma, being cloned possibly in Indian Hill, or now back in Arkham. So there you go.
Absolutely. Derek, what's your first point?
My first point is one of my favourite scenes that turned into possibly a badly judged ending, which is a Batman 66 moment in itself, I suppose, which is Alfred's fight with Cupcake. Really liked this, loved how badass Alfred was, really telling Bruce and teaching Bruce some of the rules of fighting, making sure that you just stay in the fight long enough with a big guy and then you can take them out. Really good, really enjoyed that scene, seeing Alfred really being able to kick some butt. He is a good fighter, we've seen that in the past, but some of these scenes are really well put together within the fight, and showing off the fact that he does have some skill in battling with big men like this. Only problem for me is that final moment of the scene when he does the Looney Tunes look to camera and saying, "Did someone call my name?" and then falls flat on his face. It just seemed misjudged.
It was more Laurel and Hardy than it was Batman, or indeed Alfred Pennyworth. It was a bit of an odd moment after successfully defeating the guy that he would be the one ending up on the floor, passed out unconscious, and then in hospital again. Yeah. One of my other points, and I'll just link it in here, is definitely, and again, another, well, it's our Bullockism for me of this week, is where Alfred is in hospital recovering. Jim and Harvey are there. And he says that Bruce has gone off on his own looking for Patrick Maloney's probably going to kill him. And it's like, Harvey's, we're the police. You shouldn't be telling us this. And then he says it again. He goes, again, we're the police. You really shouldn't be telling us this. Like, yeah. Do you not understand? We could arrest you for involvement in this. Yep. I love the fact that, I like the fact that Alfred was in hospital again, and it was picked out within this episode by Harvey himself, saying, you're back in here. What is this, the third time he's been in hospital?
Yes. Yeah. And isn't it Jim as well, when he answers the phone, hearing that Alfred's in hospital? We don't hear the other side of the conversation, but Jim goes, "Oh, again, all right, I'll be there soon." It seems to be the running gag for Alfred, and probably a very good reason why Alfred will actually stay inside Wayne Manor. And that's how we meet him in future. He's very much the butler that opens the door and doesn't actually go out into the city because he keeps going back and back into hospital. Despite being a very competent fighter, as we see in this episode, he does seem to get back into that hospital quite often.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the fight as well. I loved him teaching Bruce whilst he's doing it. But yeah, I mean, for me, it just, unfortunately, like Alfred, fell flat at the end, yeah. Where he does the whole comedy swoon thing. I mean, I laughed, but for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. And I mean, that, maybe they've just slightly misjudged a particular part of this scene when that happens. But nonetheless, everything before that was great, and everything after it, actually, the fact that he lands back in hospital and how they really play up that Jim and Harvey, I really liked as well. I just wish maybe he had actually gotten knocked out by Cupcake.
Yeah. Or just had Bruce carry him out at the end, and support him walking out of the place at the end as the surviving champion, I suppose, I like that idea as well, but yeah, really enjoyed it. Liked the interplay at the start where effectively Alfred's trying to be the leader and tell Bruce, I'm going to do all the talking here, but Bruce is the one that steps up, showing that he is still Bruce Wayne. He is still that strong character that will always take the lead if he feels something is going out of his control. Love those little touches in the scene as well. John, what's your next point?
My next point is just that little nod back to the director of the episode, who did Jonathan Crane, the arc there, or one of the episodes of that arc, I should say. We do hear right at the start that the techniques being used by Hugo and Miss Peabody, these vivid hallucinations that are being used to test Oswald, are from the matching the Crane formula to their techniques. So that was right. A nice little nod back, and I think the reason why I'm using this as a note is because I really want to see Jonathan Crane back in this series. I thought the guy, I can't remember his name now, who played Jonathan Crane was absolutely superb. I loved the aesthetic that he had and what he brought to the young Scarecrow. And I loved how that ending of him writhing around in the hospital ward, seeing this Scarecrow coming at him, this whole hallucination. I loved that. And so it was really nice to get that reference in here. And I hope it's more than just a reference. I hope it really is where we do get to see Jonathan Crane back in this series. Maybe he will be down in Indian Hill. And I have to say now, how and what a great device Indian Hill is for this series, because they are able to bring these characters back because of just how sort of subversive Indian Hill is, both of Wayne Enterprises and of just humanity. It's like the Frankenstein lab. I really like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great touch, isn't it? The actor that played Jonathan Crane was Charlie Tahan, who played him in the first season.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So I'd love to see him back. He's definitely a working actor and is currently doing another show as well at the moment, but could definitely come back in for an episode, and it would be a great way to use the idea that he was taken off into madness at the end of season 1, episode 14. Really good, nice little touch. I love when they do these kind of nods back where they're able to now nod back to their own history and not just connecting to the comic books. You know, they're able to now create their own Gotham mythology almost. You know, it is the city that's starting to create things that are going on, which does lead me quite nicely into my next point, which is Jerry, this excellent new kind of Jokerite, I guess, or Manixalite, maybe you'd call her, played by Laurie Petty, who I absolutely used to love the film Tank Girl, which I watched hundreds of times. One of those weird movies that just caught me the right way, and I watched it loads when I was a kid. She played the main character in that film, and in this she plays the kind of person that's following in Jerome's footsteps and the Maniac's footsteps, but actually turns out to be quite a nice character and kind of friendly to Bruce, really, which I actually enjoyed. But what I do like about this is, again, Gotham using one of their characters like Jerome and kind of creating this cult around them, setting up this idea of why there would be henchmen available for someone like the Joker when they do come in to the city, because these people are being inspired by this darkness that's rising within the city of Gotham. Jerome, as he died, said there would be a legacy left behind him and people would remember him. This is the legacy he's speaking about, this underground club that's opened up where they're constantly playing the footage of him taking over the GCPD, all that footage of the Maniacs killing the people that be throwing them off the building, episode 2, I think it was, of this season. I think that's really interesting that they're able to do that. They're able to reference back to themselves and show what effect previous episodes have had on the future of Gotham, I suppose. And this character of Jerry is a really good idea, bringing in the idea of, you know, someone drawing the smile on their face. Why would they do that? Well, they saw a guy on TV who just constantly laughed and smiled, you know? I like those little reference points. Yeah,
it's nice how this kind of punkness is coming into it, this worship of the crazy, the chaotic strands of Gotham are being gradually highlighted within the series. You know, you can see them evolving and developing all the way through the series. And that is really, really good. You know, that it doesn't just stop at Jerome's death, that it does have this long-lasting legacy. I still really wish they have the Red Hood coming up as well.
Yeah.
That there is that legacy still there. We saw that there was a hand down of the Red Hood, but I really thought the Joker lady Jerry was really cool. I loved. I was slightly unsure about how this was going to play out, because I thought, oh no, here's just another character who's going to have, you know, crazy smile look on their face, and you know, how meaningful is it going to be? And it ended up that this was really meaningful. I really liked her portrayal here. I loved how she wasn't crazy at all. Behind that mask, she was actually, as you say, this really nice lady who got the measure of Bruce and later on also got the measure of Jim Gordon. I mean, I did love that interrogation scene where she goes, the rumors about you are true. You are angry. Angry is your thing.
Yeah.
And she really actually puts him to task. So it's something I never even thought of, that, you know, not only has Leslie questioned him, not only has Captain Barnes questioned him, but now we just have like this regular club owner. Okay, it's a cult or a worship to the Maniacs and to Jerome, but behind it, really, she's maybe not all that crazy at all. She's just having a good time. It's punk. It's the punk era. Absolutely. Almost. That's how she sees it. And she's like going, you know, you are angry. It's not us who are angry. It's you. You're the one frustrated, contained, feeling all this sort of internal pressure, and you're the one that's bringing it out with anger and shouting and, quite frankly, dubious acts. I loved that. I thought that was really good. I loved the bit of advice that she gave to Bruce. And you see Bruce acknowledge it as well. And she goes, he's going to be pleased to see you, after telling him where Patrick Malone is. And she goes, it's like fate, and then that must make me God. And I love that. I thought that was a really nice little line. And she just give me a reason why I should tell you where he is. All these different elements really made this character work so well. I was so glad that Joker Lady has now been introduced into the world of Gotham. I hope we see her again, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to see Jerry back, definitely. Really good touch. Another nice touch in the episode was actually a reference to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, which is that the gang that hang out at the club are called the Mutants, which are the people that effectively are still kind of running Gotham when the Dark Knight returns in Frank Miller's seminal graphic novel from 1986. Like that idea that the mutants are in existence as a gang within Gotham. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, overall, really nice introduction to this character. Hopefully we'll see her back in future. Great to see Laurie Petty back on our screens.
Absolutely.
I think she's actually also in Orange is the New Black as well. Must check out the latest season of that and see a bit more of her stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, what's your next point?
My next point is, and you'll have to bear with me.
Okay.
I'm not a question mark, Jim. I'm a goddamn police detective. I really loved the end of this. Absolutely iconic, with the green question mark over the picture of Jim torn out of the newspaper by Ed Nigma, who is increasingly got a furrowed brow, looking fairly dark and mysterious in lamplight, in shadow, at various stages of this episode. But I really liked the fact that, thankfully, someone has noticed that Christine Kringle has gone.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, HR don't really give too much thought to their employees at the GCPD. Uncollected paychecks. Leslie's starting to now follow up on her kind of initial worry that she had expressed to Ed Nigma. She asked Gordon to kind of look into it some more. And of course, Gordon goes to Ed Nigma, and with Gordon, you just wonder. It's one of those things. He probably does have some suspicion there of Ed Nigma, because he does know that Ed has some connection with Oswald. So that side of Ed Nigma that no one else knows about, Jim is fully aware of. But I do think he is still just asking questions, because obviously Ed Nigma went out with her. Mm-hmm. But this has really spooked the Riddler now, really got his kind of back up. He's concerned that Jim is trying to outfox him, maybe lead him into a trap, think of him as a bit of a fool, that he will ultimately get ensnared by Jim in any kind of follow-up to some of these initial questions. So he's obviously starting to think he's got to try and protect himself. And I presume at the last few scenes there with Ed Nigma doing the classic green question mark over Jim, he's working out a way to try and take Jim off any kind of lead that would lead him ultimately to himself, Ed Nigma.
Yeah.
So take the hound dog off the scent. And that I loved. Really good to see the green question mark for the first time. This is a few iconic elements come into this episode, and this is one of them. Really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the green lights of Ace Chemicals shining in through the window again, really cool. Love that touch as well. I must say, just to answer your question on the poor HR department, they've probably lost about 30 of the GCPD this season since the season started. With the Maniacs and obviously Mr. Freeze killing about 6 or 7 last week. They've probably got quite a little bit of a backlog of people not picking up their paychecks, and maybe it's not really being reported back to them quickly enough. But yeah, no, I really did like this. One of the elements of it is obviously in the center of the GCPD, Ed Nigma losing it. and saying to Jim, or saying out loud to himself, I suppose, saying, well, if you've got plans, I can make plans. I was just wondering about the desk sergeant that was sitting directly beside him as to whether he was going to notice that Ed was talking quite loudly to himself in slightly crazy manner. But really did enjoy the scene, though. Really, I like this kind of stuff as the madness of Nigma is really taking over. But yeah, really cool. And again, nice to see some follow up on poor Kristen Kringle's death, because you'd hope, if any of your co-workers goes missing, you would hope that somebody would notice, not just the one person that dated them,
Yeah, absolutely.
She seemed like quite a popular person.
Yeah. And I think actually just one of my notes that I want to bring in at this moment, they're addressing Kristen Kringle, and that's fantastic. And of course they've got other stories to put out on an episode by episode basis. So that's fine. You can see why her storyline, isn't there all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you think of real time, it may only be a couple of weeks or something like that. So, okay, that's fine. One of the things I am kind of interested in at the moment is the fact that after Bruce was kidnapped by Galavan, we did have Lucius Fox come out of the Batcave going, I've cracked open the computer.
Absolutely.
And now it's gone.
Yeah.
We've not heard a squeak now for the last 3 episodes, I think it is, or 4 episodes. So I'm kind of like, this is a really big deal, because it was the first thing that really kicked off this season. It was there at episode 10 or 11 where Lucius comes out just after Galavan has kidnapped Bruce Wayne. So that must be episode 11. Yeah, it must be episode 11. And then we've not heard anything more. And you would think that Lucius would be either in and around Wayne Manor still. Obviously, Bruce and Alfred are, even though I know they've been to Geneva and all this. But it seems a bit, continuity-wise, it's a bit odd, that. But
yeah. Particularly given that Bruce and Alfred were both in what we're calling the Batcave. They were both in there where Bruce left the note for Alfred, and obviously Alfred picking it up. So they've been down there, right there with the computer. So just turn it on, find out the details.
Yeah,
doesn't take that long. Maybe they don't have the password to log in now or something.
No, and look, I mean, it is going to come out, but I just think sometimes that, okay, this is a bit odd now that it's taken this number of episodes for it to get there, and seemingly Bruce doesn't care about this computer anymore.
Yeah. Now that he's gone off to live on the streets as well.
Because it's more than just Wayne Enterprises. So, it's going to come back in, obviously, but I would love to just see now when it does and how it comes back in. This will be really good to see. But it's a bit odd now. I'm starting to think, okay, will it be in the next one, or will it be in the next one? When will Lucius finally, after racing out of the Batcave, the proto Batcave, to tell Alfred and Bruce what he's just found on the hard drive of the repaired computer, what is it going to be? Yeah. This is starting to build the suspense for me. So, it's got to be really revelatory, I think.
I hope so. But it does feel like it's going to be one of those ones. We're now in episode 14, so it feels like it might be something around episode 18 or 19 that'll hear about it. Because who's he going to tell now? Bruce is out in the streets. And Alfred's probably not as interested in getting into the computer. He never wanted in there in the first place. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes, definitely. But I think it's time to get on to the big point of the episode, I suppose. We finally...
Cupcake?
We got Cupcake. We've gone past Cupcake. Let's move on to the main cake.
And Cupcake is a Batman 66 thing. I mean, just his name.
Certainly.
The big brawler guy in the underground fight club to be called Cupcake. Yeah?
Yep. Yeah.
Or Twinkle Toes, something like that.
I guess that is a bit of an ironic thing, as Alfred says. Yeah. Like that. No, the big moment in the episode obviously is the showdown between Bruce and Matches and Patrick Matches Malone. Really enjoyed it. One of the first things that I picked up on it was as Bruce walks up to the door, knocks on it, the door opens, and the first thing we see of Matches Malone are his shoes. A little reference for the long-term Gothamites, back to season 1, episode 1 and episode 2, where we found out the one piece of evidence we had on the murderer of Bruce Wayne's parents was that he wore shiny shoes. I rewound this. Matches' shoes don't look that shiny. They don't, or at the very least, it doesn't look like the kind of guy that shines his shoes regularly enough that you would pick that out as being a distinctive feature of him. So it made me wonder instantly, just that moment, made me wonder if the whole story that Matches is talking about if he is actually the killer or not. Even though he confessed to it, and even though he told Bruce, I'm still wondering: have we found our killer, or was he making up the story because he wanted Bruce to kill him?
Absolutely. That's how I kind of took it. And in the end, I think Bruce pulls out of that because it's his viewpoint that we see looking down at the shoes. It is Bruce Wayne who is looking down to see his shoes. Are they shiny?
Yeah.
Now, we do hear that it is 2 years later. So, unless he has his special go out killing shoes, then he is obviously going to have worn them in somewhat. I know exactly what you're saying, and I think that was the point of that shot.
Yes.
And I think it's part of the reason maybe that Bruce doesn't fully buy into what he's saying. He realizes that whilst Matches may have done the deed, I think Bruce is unsure that he did actually do that. I think he's probably still got Jerry's voice ringing in his ears, which is saying, he'll be pleased to see you. It's an excuse for you to kill him. Or, for him to get out of this business. He's obviously down on his luck. He's drinking. He's fairly philosophical about his place in the world, what he's doing. And I mean, here, this seems to me to be a desperate man wanting to get out of whatever situation he is in. It could also be that situation is he's still caught between his former employer, who asked him to do that deed, and their power and pressure, and the fact maybe he can't move around like he used to. Maybe he's fairly curtailed in what he can do. Otherwise, he might get shot or killed or exposed or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot that could be going on here, I think. And I think Bruce ultimately realizes, well, he's not the person that ordered the kill. He's the one that did it. And that's ultimately his job. He's made that distinction here. He's looked down at the shoes. He's heard what Jerry said. And maybe he's just saying he's not confident enough to kill him. And ultimately, through talking with Matches Malone, he realizes he's got to do more than just simply get to the root of the evil in Wayne Enterprises and the murderers of his parents, because if he starts fighting evil with evil, it's just a gang warfare.
Exactly.
It's not justice.
Yeah.
And it's a really fantastic spark that comes into Bruce Wayne's head. Really.
Yeah, I do really enjoy that moment of realization that Bruce has when talking to Matches, when he says, I wanted you to be a monster, but you're not a monster, you're just a man. And if I kill you, that doesn't really solve anything. He's saying really that you can't finish everything that's happened since his parents were killed by resorting to revenge, because it won't solve anything at all. And potentially, as you say, he may be just realizing that if you're on a revenge streak, somebody could use you as their tool to kill people that they want to be killed, or people could use you as their tool to kill themselves, which is what I think this character of Matches was trying to do, trying to get Bruce to kill him and take him out. Maybe he was the one that killed the Waynes. Maybe he was. But it felt like his explanation only came after Bruce said, do you remember, my parents and myself were together. We walked down a dark alley. He seemed to not recognize it. And then Bruce said, and then my mom had the pearl necklace, which you broke. And his response to it was, yes, and the pearls went everywhere. Oh, yeah, and your mom was blonde and your dad was well dressed. And it's like, well, it's Bruce Wayne. You know what the Waynes are going to look like, obviously. He's told you that the necklace is broken. Obviously, pearls are going to go everywhere if he's told you the necklace is broken. So there was no real information that he gave him that he may not have picked up from the story. So maybe he's not the killer, but I like the realization that Bruce has that you can't become just a tool of vengeance, killing everything in your path, or else people will use you to do that for them, and then you become the villain, which I really like. It's like a Nolan revelation, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really good scene. It really connects in well, and I suppose this is kind of my final point, into Bruce leaving the written letter to Alfred, and that realization that he's communicating to Alfred. I mean, Alfred says he's gone mad. Like, Alfred still doesn't understand it, that Bruce is going to be with Selina, sleep on the streets in order to absorb the streets. And that's something out of Nolan's Batman Begins, where Bruce goes down on his luck, grows the shabby beard, goes off, goes into prison, goes to the Tibetan mountains, to the monastery, all of that in a different way, is what the young Bruce Wayne is doing here by
Yeah.
going and sleeping on the streets with Selina, becoming a street urchin, learning the life of the street, the rhythms of the street, all of this that is going to be hugely important to a billionaire who has been absolutely divorced from any of those kind of patterns, into being able to fight them for justice, and the Batman way.
Absolutely, yeah. I like that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, I really like that scene, and I loved this close out of the episode. You know, and a good voiceover leading you to know where Bruce is going to be, what he's doing, why he's doing it. I love some of the touches around it, where you see the car driving past, and the guy in the back of the car is getting 2 bullets to the head as Bruce is walking directly by the car. Just setting up the fact this is not a place where Bruce should be. This is not a safe environment just because he's with Selina. It's not going to be an easy trip for him. So hopefully we do get to see a bit of the two of them on the street, and this isn't just they're going to disappear for 3 or 4 episodes, and we'll see them back, and Bruce is a stronger and different character. I hope we're going to see some of the adventures of Selina and Bruce on the streets of Gotham. It'd be quite cool.
Derek, have you got any more notes?
Yeah, I think that kind of encapsulates my final points as well. But I do have, a couple of notes. Just the actual speech from Matches to Bruce I really enjoyed, where he says, "I might as well call you son because I made you like Gotham made me. Therefore, I'm your father," kind of thing. I thought that was a really nice touch. Obviously, Oswald being officially released as a sane person into the streets of Gotham, as you mentioned, is a really interesting choice. You know, is he sane? Is he brainwashed? Will the brainwashing fail in a week's time, and he's back being Oswald? And is that the plan of Strange? Is that what he wants? You know, he wants to see something that he's done as being a success, but does he really care if the Penguin returns? You know, thought that was quite interesting. I was expecting from the conversations of those two characters over the last few weeks that actually Oswald would become a presentation piece that he would use at conferences and that kind of thing, where he would say, "This is what my tools and this is what my manipulation can do. We can turn one of Gotham's greatest criminals into a person who wouldn't hurt a fly," you know? I thought that that's the way they were going to go, but to see him with the sane sign in front of him, walking out the door or waddling out the door, I thought was
looking
quite
decidedly insane.
Yes, a little more
really,
insane. Yeah.
Really funny. Absolutely.
John, any other notes about the episode?
I just, I love when Selina passes Bruce the handgun and she goes, "This is not for show. It's not for protection. They're only for one thing." I thought that was a really nice little line. This idea of, why do people want or have or carry guns? And I thought that was quite a nice, neat little way of encapsulating all of that. It's only for one thing, and it's to kill people.
Yeah.
Whatever other motives you may want to assign to it, it's designed to be fired and to kill people. And she's really laying that out on the table for Bruce to understand from here on out. Yeah,
totally agree. A good little moment from Selina, and that's exactly what the gun did in the end. It did kill Matches, even though it wasn't at the hands of Bruce. It did take his life in the end. So that's our notes and points about episode 14 of Gotham. Overall about the episode, John, what did you think?
No, I liked it. I thought it was a good episode. I really, I think Bruce Wayne's story just really absolutely flew out at me here. And I think just seeing the green question mark as well, these were the things that really sort of hit home for me from this episode. I think, as well, Jerry was a really good character, really good new character. And I'd love to see her again. I'm loving Hugo Strange as always. I think the only thing that maybe the slight negative I would have is because it was so dark, some of the more obvious lighter moments either didn't connect, such as Alfred falling, that in other episodes may have actually worked.
Maybe.
Or to me, they really did stand out as Batman 66 moments, but they still worked. So that's fine. But I think overall, I think this is a strong episode as well for the whole mythos of Batman. Not just within Gotham, but I mean wider. It shows him really realizing he has to fight crime by knowing what the streets of Gotham are like, and that killing is not the answer. It's really just, we've seen, I suppose, the Riddler form over a long time now with the character of Enigma, and we've seen him maybe turning into the Riddler like at least twice, but here we just have the motif come in for the first time, the real strong motif of the question mark. So really iconic aspects here from this episode.
Definitely.
And I think that's why I would really give this 4 cupcakes out of 5 with a lovely cherry on top as well.
Nice.
Because it is a strong episode. There were a couple of things that, as I say, fell flat. Ba-dum-ding. But it was a really strong episode. I think they do need to bring Lucius Fox's revelation of what's on the computer back in. That will come hopefully in time. It'll be interesting to see when it does come and how it is brought into the series again. But really thought this was a strong, good episode. Yeah,
no, I totally agree with you. Exactly the same kind of scoring, maybe without the cherries on top for me. But overall, really good. Liked seeing Bruce and Alfred. And I take your point, actually. This would have been the exact episode that you would have the revelation from Lucius in, because it's the episode about finding out the killer of Bruce Wayne's parents. A great revelation to have the two of those characters look at each other in the eye before Bruce is possibly going to pull the trigger on the person who killed his parents. That's a nice little tie-up after, 36 episodes of the show that we finally get to see this moment. And I like that there's still a doubt in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of other Gotham fans, as to whether Matches is the killer. And possibly if Bruce had been able to see the computer before he left the house on this rampage, I suppose, potentially there would have been a completely different answer on there.
Absolutely.
So, but really enjoyed it and looking forward to episode 15 of Gotham next week. I think it's time to get on to the feedback, John. First up, as usual, a bit of feedback on Twitter.
Yeah, one of our first pieces of feedback on Twitter came from Paul Edwards. He said, "Don't mess with the ex-Special Air Service butler. Efficient while polite. Just peachy, mate."
Tom Calderon says, "It seems distressing that Christine Kringle had so much in taxes taken out of her paychecks."
Yeah, that's Officer Joe. I completely agree. Wouldn't you? It'd be total bummer if you had all that tax taken out.
Absolutely. I think it's what's driving Gothamites insane. Possibly.
Maybe.
All the taxes that are being taken from the corrupt government of Gotham.
Jamar Green, who played Mr. Cupcake in this episode, says, 50 grand for a fight. You all come back now you're here.
Yeah, I think he's one of the highest paid crooks in Gotham, probably, apart from the people that are taking the taxes. Dr. John Disco says, Oswald's about as sane as Alex was after his treatment in A Clockwork Orange. Yeah, good reference there. We did mention in the past that the tools that Professor Strange seems to be using on Oswald are very reminiscent of Clockwork Orange. Yeah, good point.
And Media Shock UK came in with, "We are looking back at Gotham and thinking Sean Pertwee playing Alfred has to be one of the best castings ever. Couldn't agree with you more." And Catherine Haverty also says, "Yeah, like one of the greatest ever. No question. He's the best. It's not Gotham without some 00 Alfred." Absolutely. And going back to Paul Edwards, a fantastic little fight there from Sean Pertwee, definitely.
Absolutely. Love how polite he is as well during the fight too. Onto a bit of Facebook feedback. Claire Payne says, "Another great episode, great scenes with Bruce and Jerry, and when he confronted Matches, Jim crowd surfing in the club was a very personal highlight. It's going to be very interesting to see how Bruce gets on with Selina living on the streets, Oswald being even more sane than before. Haha. Bravo, Gotham." Yeah, really interesting to see how Bruce is going to be surviving the streets with Selina. It'll be really, really interesting. And obviously, Jerry absolutely loved her in this episode.
Definitely. Another person wandering the streets, as Ben Rush says, is, "So Matches is gone. I guess Joe Chill is still walking around then." Mm-hmm. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, was Matches really the killer? Or was he a contract killer? Or was it definitely him? There are still a few open-ended questions here. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And maybe Joe Chill is still to come out of the freeze box, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I like the fact that Gotham can really have its cake and eat it here. They can kind of wrap up the storyline of the murderer of the Waynes, but they can also bring in next season, perhaps, Joe Chill as the actual real killer of the Waynes. Or perhaps, as you mentioned earlier on, John, about when they break open the computer, perhaps they will find more clues to Joe Chill.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, on Facebook feedback, we have Doug Green says, "Laurie Petty was easily the best part of that episode. Absolutely love Laurie Petty in this. I really hope we see her back, actually. She brought something really special to the character and to the episode. I loved her interaction with both Bruce Wayne and with Jim Gordon. Really, really good.
Yeah, certainly. There was one nice touch that I didn't actually bring out my points that I liked about her, that effectively her band is taking inspiration from the Maniacs. They're the ones that are playing the videos in the background of Jerome and all that kind of stuff. I like this piece because it's kind of like the punk bands in the 70s that used to take inspiration from Charles Manson, from serial killers in the 60s and stuff. And then you actually meet them and it turns out they're the politest people. They're really nice people. They're just taking inspiration for their music from a really terrible event. So a nice little touch there. And also one of the cool things about having this new club in Gotham is that it takes the place of Fish Mooney's club, where all those wonderful bands used to play punk music from the 70s and from the 80s. This looks like this could be a new location where we'll see some cool music being played.
Absolutely. Like Laurie Petty, hopefully this club will also return to some of the other episodes of Gotham.
And actually, just another couple of notes about Laurie Petty. Claire points out to us that she was in League of Their Own. I mentioned that she's in Orange is the New Black at the moment, but she was also in League of Their Own. She's in Tank Girl, as I mentioned before. And Ben Rush points out that she was the voice of Livewire on Superman the Animated Series, so a little bit of DC work from her as well.
Absolutely. Really can't wait to see her back. I have my fingers, legs, and toes crossed on this. I thought she was excellent. Completely agree with Doug on that. We also have feedback from Natalie. She sent in her feedback through feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com. So if you have any thoughts or comments about the show, please absolutely feel free to send in your thoughts or comments or discussion points on any episode of Gotham.
Yeah, 260 characters aren't always enough. So pop in an email to us if you want to as well. Yeah.
She really enjoyed this episode. She said it was a really electrifying episode, lads. Not only did kind of Gordon and Bullock get a break from chasing some of the cases of their own, but there was the concentration of Bruce on his own chase and crusade to find justice for his parents. He goes, poor Jim Gordon was also stuck chasing after Bruce's leads, trying to stop Bruce from killing Matches Malone. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was one of the big points of this, I suppose, was, to what extent were we going to see Bruce kill someone and then have the realization that he can't do that because he's done it? Or were you going to get the realization that he can't kill people without killing people?
Yeah.
And this was one of the big things about this episode. Absolutely. She also goes on to say how she really liked how Alfred took charge of the hunt, at least initially, until he came up against Cupcake. And, again, that whole fatherly protective aspect and the reasons for trying to help Bruce and to keep Bruce from interfering with Alfred's strategy. Alfred is really looking for Bruce to, in a sense, obey him at all times. He really does, at that first moment, take charge. And I think this is one of those slight tensions now between Alfred and Bruce, is that Bruce is growing up. Bruce is saying it's 2 years since the death of his mum and dad. You can even see it just from the screen time. David Mazouz has matured from when that initial death and scene of him screeching over his dead parents in that shot to now. And so it would make sense that a child, a teenager, a kid of his age would start to rebel against an authority figure to some extent. And in this case, Alfred is that. There is that tension of adolescence from Bruce to Alfred as well. As well as the fact that Bruce is ultimately his boss. He's not simply now under the guardianship of Alfred, the former employee of Bruce's dead mum and dad.
Yeah.
It's quite a complex relationship, and I think it's made more complex probably by now, 2 years on. Bruce is also growing up. He's becoming his own thinking machine in that sense.
Absolutely. And he even calls himself, as he sign off in the letter to Alfred, he calls himself your good friend, Bruce. He's no longer calling himself anything else. It's your good friend, Bruce, I'd highly recommend any of our listeners going back and checking out episode 1 of Gotham. Again, I just watched, just before we started recording, I just watched that opening scene with David Mazouz, and he has changed. He really has. You can tell the 2 years that have passed significantly. He does look so young in that opening sequence for episode 1. Kind of forgotten how young he looks there and how much older he is and how much more mature he looks now on screen in Gotham. yes, but a kind of an amazing change in the last couple of years. You can definitely see the passage of time.
Natalie also goes on to say then, I love Match's line where he realizes that the Wayne murders made Bruce into who he is, just as Gotham made Matches into what he is. And the rich folk like the Waynes made Gotham. That's a nice chain that echoes throughout this episode and the Burton Batman, where the young mugger Jack Napier kills the Waynes and makes Batman, and then Batman pushes the older crook Jack Napier into the chemical vat to make the Joker. Exactly. It's this chain of events. It's this influence of the environment and the society on the people who we become. It's a really important thing. I think in general that this is what it's saying, is that we are a product, not just simply of biology, but of our experiences, our environment, our society, and so on. Like, this is a really important thing, which we kind of lose, I think, these days. And so for me, I completely agree with you, Natalie, here on this. I think she goes on to say, more importantly, the phrase, just as Gotham made me, in the middle of that line helps Bruce realize that Matches is just as damaged a person, and is not this monster that Bruce has been making him into. And I think that's one of the other reasons why he pulls back from any kind of, murderous action that he could have taken here. Natalie actually goes on to say, for her, this is a perfect Gotham resolution. Bruce's initial mission for justice for his parents is partially resolved. The hitman is found, commits suicide before the police could make him give up his client. So there's still that air of mystery there. And in confronting Matches Malone, Bruce realizes that most criminals are not evil, just desperate and broken. And so this spurs him on then, as Natalie goes, to see the criminal element where it begins among these down and outs and the people on the streets. And this really influences him to go off with Selina to go and study for the undercover part of the Batman on the street. And there's a huge moment. So this is a really good aspect of Gotham that's really showing just those missing moments between the death of Thomas and Martha and Batman becoming Batman. We only see them briefly or fleetingly in the films, and this is really starting to flesh it out quite nicely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for your feedback there, Natalie. As always, it's great to get your input. It's really, really good.
Yep, thanks very much for your feedback, Natalie.
Yeah, remember, anyone who wants to leave any feedback or comments, you can do it on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Gotham TV Podcast. You can go to our Twitter handle at Gotham TV Podcast, or as I indicated before, you can send in a message to feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to hearing from you, and looking forward to be back for episode 15 of Gotham Season 2 next week.
Absolutely. It should be really interesting. Remember, for everyone who's listening, especially for those who are maybe just new to the podcast, you can find us at gothamtvpodcast.com/iTunes, or you can search Gotham TV Podcast on any good podcast catcher such as Beyond Pod, Podcast Addict. Please subscribe to us there, and then you'll get our feed straight into your podcast catcher or iTunes. You can obviously then leave a review, which is very useful, as that helps other people find our podcasts. Again, a really good episode, and really a lot of stuff there for the history of Bruce Wayne in this episode. But we will be back with you next week. It's been great chatting again about all things Gotham.
Absolutely. Talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks for being a Butch supporter. Butch loves you, baby.
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/Flickering Myth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.